everyone, I'm Celine from Blue Calla Patterns, and this is video 2 for the Cosmos bag. We are going to, and I know I mentioned exterior assembly in the last video, but what we're actually going to work on in this video is the lining back panel, where we have our interior zipper pocket and our slip pockets. Now this is pretty repetitive. If you've watched any of my videos in the past, I always do the zipper pocket the same way, and the slip pocket is really straightforward. So if you understand pages 4 and I believe 5 in the pattern, yes, 4 and 5, you can just go ahead and skip to the next video. Otherwise, I will go through this assembly, and it's actually going to be pretty fast and pretty simple. What we'll do first is we'll start with the slip pocket. So you're going to take your 2 slip pocket pieces and you're going to place them right sides together. And then you're just going to pin them together along the top edge, the top straight edge here, and you're going to go sew them together. And then we're going to press the seam allowance open and then press them wrong sides together and top stitch that seam allowance along the top edge. Okay, so the top edge is sewn together, and now I'm just going to start by pressing that seam allowance open. And then flip them so they are wrong sides together. And then press that seam allowance along the top. Okay, and then I'm going to go over to my machine and I'm going to top stitch along the top edge here of the pocket. Okay, so I've top stitched the top edge of my pocket, my slip pocket piece. And now I'm going to place this over top of my back panel lining piece, and I'll pin it in place, and then I'm just going to go over to my machine and I'll base stitch it to this back panel lining piece just around the curved edge here. Okay, so the slip pocket is basted to the back panel lining piece. Then I'm just going to fold it in half vertically, wrong sides together, and make a little mark at the top and the bottom of the pocket piece. And then I'm going to go over to my machine and I'll start sewing at the bottom center mark all the way up to the top, and then at the top here I'm going to back stitch. Okay, so I now have 2 separate slip pockets, and I'm going to start working on my zipper pocket. So what I'm going to do first is on the wrong side of my zipper facing piece, I am going to draw a rectangle box on the wrong side. Actually, I'm going to use my ruler with a grid. Okay, so I'm going to draw, because my zipper is 8 inches, I want to draw a box on the wrong side that is 8 inches. My pen's not working. 8 inches by 3/8 of an inch or 1/2 an inch. So I don't have an 8-inch zipper, so I'm going to be using 10 inches of zipper tape. Well, it's 10 inches long, but only 8 inches of it will be inside the opening here. And because it's a number 5 coil zipper, I'm going to make the rectangle box 1/2 an inch. But if you're using a dress zipper, a number 3 dress zipper, you can just draw a box that is 3/8 of an inch. Okay, and there should be about an inch of space all the way around, roughly. It'd be a little bit more or less. Then take your back panel lining piece and place your facing piece, and you want the bottom edge here of the facing piece to be just above this top edge of the slip pocket. And then pin it in place. And then I'm going to go over to my machine and I'm going to sew along this rectangle that we just drew. And I keep my needle in the down position so that when I get to a corner, my needle stays down, and then I lift my foot and then I just rotate, and that makes really nice, perfect corners. Okay, so the facing piece is sewn to the back lining piece like this. And what I want to do is draw a horizontal line through the center of that rectangle box, and then I want to draw some diagonal lines going from that center line to the four corners. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered or anything like that. Just make sure that you're staying away from the sides and try to be in the middle as much as possible. Okay, so cut the center line. You're not going all the way to the ends. You're stopping about 1/2 inch from each end, and then use a pair of really sharp scissors. I actually use my thread snips because I can get really close into the corner here. So now we're cutting the diagonal lines that are going from the center line to each of the four corners. And you want to make sure you do not cut the stitches at the corners, but get in there as close as you can to the stitches. This would be easier if I was wearing my glasses, but hopefully I don't ruin this. Okay, just push it aside. Now you're pushing this facing piece through to the wrong side. Okay, and then dampen your fingers and roll the seam in between your fingers like so. And you're sort of finger pressing by doing this. So I'll do a little bit at a time. And I take my time doing this because I want the opening of my zipper pocket to look really nice. So I do this on the right side first, and then I'll flip it over and I'll do it on the wrong side as well. Okay, then I'm going to flip it over and do it on this side. And now, if you don't cut close enough to your corners, you might see a little bit of puckering, so just be careful not to burn yourself and kind of tug at the fabric, and it usually flattens out kind of nicely. Okay, so now I have the opening for my zipper pocket. I'm going to set that aside. And I'm going to take my zipper pocket lining pieces. Now, if these look different, it's because I realized that I cut my first set of pieces the wrong width. They were only 9 inches and they're supposed to be 10 inches, so I had to cut some new pieces. So try not to do what I do. Okay, so now I'm just folding the bottom edge towards the wrong side, about 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. It doesn't really matter as long as you do the same for both pieces. if you want to get it really straight, I have this metal ruler that I usually use to do this, but I seem to have misplaced it. I don't know where it is, but I miss it. Okay, so once I've done that, I'm going to trim away 1 inch from the top edge of one piece. So not the folded edge, the straight edge. And you're only doing this for one of the zipper pocket lining pieces, not both. Okay, now, as I said, I didn't have a pre-made 8-inch zipper, so I'm using 10 inches of zipper tape. The zipper that I had before was actually the wrong size. So if you have 10 inches of zipper tape, it's going to go all the way from one end to the other. If you're using a pre-made zipper, it will not go all the way to the end. It'll stop short, maybe 1/4 inch on either side. Just make sure that you're centering it along the top edge. So now I'm going to go over to my machine. I'm going to sew the zipper tape in place along the top here with 1/4 inch seam allowance, and make sure that you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, the zipper tape is sewn onto the first pocket lining piece, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press it away from the zipper, like so. Okay, and I'm going to repeat this step, and I'm going to sew the other pocket lining piece to the other side of the zipper. You're doing exactly the same steps again. Okay, so the second piece is now attached to the other side of the zipper, and I'm going to do the same thing again and press that seam allowance away from the zipper. Okay, this is what it's going to look like from this side. Okay, now I'm going to take this back lining piece, and I'll just move my zipper away here. And I want to place the zipper with attached lining pieces inside the rectangle opening. You're going to have the shorter zipper pocket lining piece at the bottom, and then you're lining up the edge of the facing here with the edges of the zipper pocket lining pieces. I don't glue or anything in this step because I just like to pin lightly so that I can move the zipper around inside the rectangle box while I'm sewing it in place to make sure that it's perfectly centered in the box. Everyone prefers a different method for doing this, but this is what I like to do. So I'm going to go over to my machine, and I'm going to sew through all the layers here just outside of the rectangle box opening, and with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so the zipper is sewed in place, and I'm just going to turn this over now so I can look at the wrong side. And I'm going to take the top folded edge of the top zipper pocket piece, and I'm just going to line it up with the bottom folded edge of the bottom zipper pocket lining piece. Just going to pin these together like so. I did not do a good job ironing this. So what I'm also going to do, you'll notice it kind of bubbles up here. So what I want to do is I want to press it up and away from the zipper so that my pocket lining piece does not get stuck in the zipper. Also going to fix this bottom folded edge because it's bugging me. Okay, and then just press upwards to flatten that. And then I'm going to go over to my machine. I'm going to turn this over like this, and I'm going to sew all of this together to sew up the sides. You're not going to be sewing the bottom folded edges. Those need to stay open to turn your bag in the last step. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to move my back panel lining piece out of the way. I'm going to back stitch, sew all the way down to the bottom folded edges and back stitch again. And then you do the same thing on the other side. And when you're sewing here, you're trying to sew as close as you can to the box of stitching around the rectangle box. Okay, so the sides of the zipper pocket are sewn together, so I'm just going to actually trim this a little bit because I don't want any of this getting into the seam allowance on the sides. If you trim some of your zipper, make sure that you seal the edges so it doesn't fray. I do not know what I was thinking here, but this is the most terrible cutting. Okay, so this is done. Open up your zipper all the way, and you have your opening that we're going to use for turning the bag. Now that's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to start attaching all of our pieces to our main zipper.